Hey guys, it's Dr. May. How are you? Hope things are good in your world. So today we're going to talk more about emotions and particularly the hidden gifts of negative emotions. So this kind of gives us a different view than we might have had before because chances are if you were in therapy, then maybe you feel like, my emotions are a problem for me and I wish they would go away. And, I kind of want to get rid of them. Why do I have to have them anyway? Right. So if we figure out what the gifts are in our emotions, we might be able to appreciate them in a new way. Right. And so it gives us a whole new perspective. All right. So let's get started. So some gifts of emotions in general. So it actually has the hidden gift of healing because every time you feel them is an opportunity to try to heal them, right? And you can't heal what you don't feel. So if you feel your emotions and you recognize that, and then you approach them in a mindful way and you direct loving kindness and compassion and acceptance toward your emotions, it starts to shift them and it starts to heal whatever that emotional energy is. And so the next time you experience them, it might actually be a little bit different. So if you have this new approach to your emotions and you do it over and over again, your general experience of your emotions shifts. And that can lead to more inner healing. So that's really important to keep in mind, right? So instead of them being a problem, think of it as an opportunity. Okay. Another thing is that just by feeling our emotions makes us feel more alive. So it is a hidden gift of vitality. So if you think of like someone taking your vital signs, it's like your heartbeat and your blood pressure. So those are signs of being alive, right? So the fact that we're feeling something is a sign that there's life and energy coursing through us. And that's a good thing. And if you've ever had the experience of emotional deadness or numbness, that could be really unpleasant too. So the opposite and the sign of feeling something could actually be a positive thing, right? So that's the vitality. Another thing is that we need to feel in order to have a sense of empathy and connection toward other people. Because when we're with other people, it stirs up something within us and we start to feel something. And we might feel a little bit of what they're feeling because the mirror neurons in our brain register, the emotion that they're experiencing and we get a touch of it ourselves. So when we tune into our emotions, when we're with somebody, it gives us a little sense of what they're going through. And then we can communicate that to that person. So that creates empathy, or in DBT terms, validation, right? And we end up feeling more connected with people when we're able to feel something for somebody. If you felt absolutely nothing for somebody, you'd probably be a psychopath. You wouldn't feel anything for people and you'd have no problem taking advantage of people and treating them badly, right? So the fact that you feel something for someone is a really good sign. And it might help you to be a good friend or a partner or a son or daughter or just a compassionate person, right? A sensitive person. And that's a really good thing. All right, so now I'm going to go into some specific emotions. I'm going to cover sadness first. And there's actually a lot of hidden gifts in sadness, probably more than the other emotions. So this is kind of interesting because sadness is so hard and painful, right? Like it's not always pleasant to feel sad. But let's talk about some of the ways that sadness could actually help us. So sadness could actually give us the gift of solitude. So sometimes when our lives are too focused on external things and people and activities and busyness, sadness kind of forces us to withdraw and regroup. So it brings us within ourselves. And sometimes it allows us the space to contemplate, to think things through, to integrate things in a new way, and to tend to our personal issues. It gives us a space to grieve if we're going through a loss, because loss is often a trigger for sadness. And some of that inner work is necessary in that withdrawn state before we come back out to the world. And when we do come back out, we're in a better place. So sadness actually allows us to do that. Okay. Another gift of sadness is the hidden gift of caring. So the fact that you miss somebody that you lost, or that you are upset about a situation that's changed, or some other loss in your life, shows that you care, that you have the capacity to feel something for that person or thing or situation. It might make you a little sentimental in that way, and it's not a bad thing to care enough to feel sad. If you tried to prevent sadness by avoiding caring, your life would be that much more empty, right? It's sort of like the old saying, it's better to have loved and lost than to never to have loved at all, right? Because it shows that you're human and you have that capacity. Okay. Another gift of sadness, ironically, interestingly, is a hidden gift of heaviness, right? So sometimes our life gets a little too frivolous, a little too light, a little too fragmented, and we kind of just don't take things too seriously. But sadness actually feels heavy in your body, and it brings an emotional heaviness in that forces us to kind of think about things more deeply, maybe like look at some emotions behind our other emotions to kind of get the weightiness of a situation, maybe to consolidate our life values and philosophy a little bit more instead of having them more fragmented and scattered around. So that heaviness kind of it give us more of a solid core. And sometimes we need that. Obviously, if it's in excess, it could be too heavy, it could be too burdensome. But when it's in balance with the lightness of life, it's an important part of that rhythm. Okay. All right. Another thing about sadness is there a hidden gift of maturity. So when you've been through challenging situations, including loss, and you've been through maybe trauma or a lot of stress or a lot of tough things in your life, it kind of forces you to grow up. And going through those grieving processes kind of forces you to be a little bit more mature and sometimes even wise beyond your years, like an old soul, so to speak. And being older and wiser in that emotional sense could be a good source of your personal wisdom and also something that you could share with others. Okay, there's a lot of sadness, isn't there? Okay, but another thing is that there's a hidden gift of emptiness. So a lot of times, if you think about it, you pair together the feeling of sadness and emptiness, right? That there's like, I feel empty inside now. Like maybe there's a loss and there's a void because of that loss, including a loss of meaning. When there's a big change or loss in your life philosophy may not work for you anymore. Maybe things that you thought should be fair and just really weren't very fair and just. And so you have to reevaluate what you think of life. But from that uncomfortable feeling of emptiness, there's a possibility of something new to be born. That you had to clear out the old, you had to let go of old attachments, and it frees up a space for something new in your life to grow. And that new thing that grows might bring you to the next level of maturity in your personal development. Okay. All right, so we're moving on to another emotion or other emotions. So guilt and regret. So guilt is a feeling you get when you feel like you did something wrong. And regret is something that happens when you feel like I made a bad decision and I wish I made another decision. So they're both kind of related, right? So like the picture here says shoulda, coulda, woulda. That's the kind of thought process that goes along with this, right? Thinking back and saying, oh, I wish I could have did something different, right? So what's good about this? What are the hidden gifts? So one is the hidden gift of change, right? So if you feel upset enough about a mistake you made or a decision you made, you might be more motivated to do something different the next time, right? But if you felt nothing about it, you might repeat the same mistake over and over again. I mean, you still might repeat the same mistake over and over again, but sometimes the emotion that you feel spurs you to make more of an effort to do something different. You also might be more inclined to contemplate what happened and to gain insight and to learn from the experience so that you can make a different kind of choice the next time. So you might gain wisdom as a result of your guilt and regret. And you also might remind yourself why it's so important to live within your values, because sometimes the guilt feeling comes when you made a choice that was against your values. So let's say you value honesty and then you told a big lie and now you are guilty about it and you regret it. It might remind you in the future that, you know what, honesty is really important to me. I got to live by that value because when I don't, I feel really guilty and I regret it, right? So we kind of force you to kind of live in your wise mind just a little bit more. All right, so shame. Unlike guilt, which is when you feel like you did something wrong, shame is what you feel when you think that you are wrong, that there's something wrong with me, that I'm so flawed that I'm not worthy of connection with other people. Okay, so what's a hidden gift of shame? for the most part, there's really not a lot good about shame. But if you were young and you experienced shame, or in certain circumstances, even now, there might be the hidden gift of safety. Because when you think of the emotion action with shame, shame makes us want to curl up in a ball, hide, um, avoid trouble, appease the enemy, and stuff like that. It might lead us to freeze. It's like a freeze and collapse response to threat. And sometimes that staying away from the enemy and making ourselves small was the safest thing we could think of doing. Fighting would have been too dangerous. Running away may not have been possible, but keeping ourselves quiet and small was the best choice. So we may not always want to continue making that choice, but we could honor the fact that we felt that and did that because at the time it might have just been the best option, right? So we could validate that emotional response. Okay, fear. All right, so fear, as you may have guessed, the hidden gift of safety, right? So fear is a response to threat that makes us want to flee or run away, just like that man is running away from the hippo. I guess it's a hippo, right? I'm sorry, I'm not a big expert at animals, but fear makes us want to run, and it's designed to help keep us safe. So when we're confronting something that's a threat to our physical being or to our emotional being, we're trying to avoid it in order to prevent ourselves from getting hurt. So while fear, when overdone, could be a problem, in moderation, it could be really useful. Okay, another thing about fear is that it gives us the hidden gift of taking action, especially if we've been procrastinating. So let's say, for example, in that first picture on the left, maybe that man was engaging in unhealthy lifestyle behaviors, maybe eating a lot of unhealthy food, smoking, whatever it happens to be. And now he's really sick, So after years and years of maybe being told, listen, you got to stop smoking, you got to eat better, you got to exercise, he went, yeah, I put it off. But now that he's sick and he's scared for his life, maybe now he's finally willing to take action, right? Sometimes something has to scare us enough to want to do something about it, because before that, we're too complacent, right? Or let's say, I'm in school and I have a project due in a month. I don't feel much about it right now, so I'm not really working on the project. But as that deadline starts getting closer, I have a little more anxiety about, I better get this done. So it spurs me on to want to take action, right? So that could be one of the gifts of the fear feeling too. All right, so another thing about fear, if you think about it, fear and change go together. That when we change the status quo and we try to enter into uncharted territory or uncertainty or vulnerability, fear is like the signal that, something's changing and it might be dangerous. Not that it's always dangerous, but that might be our natural response. But if we think about it, the fear feeling just might be a sign that things are changing or that there's changes about to come on the horizon. And that change might bring me to a whole different, higher level of my being, right? Maybe it's a really positive change and I'm a little anxious about it, but I know it's going to make my life better. Maybe it's getting discharged from the hospital. Maybe it's getting married. Maybe it's having a kid. Maybe it's going to school, right? But the fact that I'm feeling a little fear about it is a sign that I'm about to grow. All right. So it may not be such a bad thing, right? There's a little danger in that shift, but there's a lot of good things waiting for you too, perhaps. Okay. Okay. Anger. Okay. So anger is also a response to threat. This is the fight response to threat. And in some cases, that's really appropriate. We need to fight to protect ourselves. Okay. So it's a hidden gift of protection. Sometimes we overdo it and we perceive threat everywhere and we start fighting everyone and everything, and that's a problem, obviously. A lot of people have anger management problems, but in certain circumstances, anger could really be helpful. All right. Another thing about anger, interpersonally, is that it tends to push people away, right? If someone's yelling and screaming at me, I might tend to back off and not really want to deal with them because it's very uncomfortable. So when we direct our anger toward others, it helps us get some space. So there's obviously other ways we could use, methods we could use to gain space, but sometimes it's the only thing we could come up with in that moment that gives us a little more space and boundaries between ourselves and other people. So it prevents other people from overwhelming us, from threatening us, from tapping into our vulnerability, from permeating our boundaries, and it gives us that hidden gift of space. Okay, and again, remember that there's other ways to do it, but sometimes anger serves that purpose, and it can be very useful. Okay, another thing about anger is that it helps us get more involved, because anger is an approach emotion, right? Like when you feel angry, you feel like getting up in someone's face, right? But sometimes we get up in the face of, you know, our law, you know, or our congressmen or our presidents or, union leaders or whatever it happens to be. We get us involved in something that we feel very strongly about. We might feel that, there was an injustice that we need to deal with. We might need to push for a solution to something that's a problem, and anger could help fuel that energy. Okay, and in the end, it might help us to actually improve a situation. You know. Okay, so related to that, thinking about even on a larger scale, anger could fuel our commitment to correcting wrongs in society, such as the Black Lives Matter movement. Right? People are angry about being treated unfairly and unjustly, especially by law enforcement. So they're gathering, they're marching, and they're saying, we deserve better. We deserve equality, right? So the anger fuels this desire to correct an injustice. And that could be super important, right? Because we all deserve to be treated fairly and equally. And anger could help us overcome obstacles. So on a lower level, frustration is what we feel when there's an obstacle in the way to getting somewhere, right? So if I'm trying to walk down a path and there's a big boulder in my path, I might feel frustrated because I can't get where I'm going, right? So the anger, which is a higher level of frustration, is about how do I overcome those obstacles? How do I move around it? It might fuel my energy to figure out how to do that, or to advocate for myself, to get someone else to help me do that. And that could be really important, because as we start to work on our goals, we are going to encounter obstacles. And sometimes we need a little bit, right, to kind of move past it and not be stuck, right? So anger could be the fuel for that. All right, so jealousy. So how do we define jealousy? So jealousy is when I have something or somebody, and what I have is threatened by a third party. So if those two little eggs on the left are a couple, and one of the eggs is, threatened by the third egg, like the third egg's trying to take one of the eggs away, and stuff like that, the other egg might be jealous, right? Like if you're in a couple relationship, you might be jealous of your partner because you think a third party is going to take your partner away. Like your partner might be cheating with another person, or someone might be enticing your partner to cheat with them, right? So that spurs on jealousy. It's about that fear of losing something that's yours to another person or party. All right, so, but what does jealousy have to offer us? The hidden gift of connection. Now, jealousy could often go wrong, okay? Like extreme jealousy could be a huge problem, especially when it leads to controlling behavior. But sometimes feeling a little jealousy is a sign that maybe you and your partner are drifting apart too much, or maybe there's not enough connection, or maybe you two are doing your own thing and living parallel lives, and you have a right to feel like the relationship's a little threatened. So the jealousy helps draw the person back, maybe help re-glue your relationship. So when you feel that, it might be a sign that that connection is something that's important to you, or something that the relationship could benefit from having more of. Right. Envy. Okay, a lot of times jealousy and envy are interchanged language, but actually quite different. Envy is when someone else has something that I wish I had. So jealousy is a threat of losing something that you do have. Envy is wishing you have something that you don't have. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So like the girl on the right has a little plant, and the girl on the left has a big plant. So the girl with the little plant wishes she had the big plant that the girl on the left has, right? So she's envious of the girl on the left, right? So someone else has something I wish I had. All right, so what is the hidden gift? The hidden gift is desire. It's if the fact that I want something better than what I have isn't always such a bad thing, right? While I could still appreciate and count my blessings, I could also strive to do better. And sometimes seeing what someone else has and seeing that it's better than what I have can motivate me to want to achieve that too, right? And sometimes that's a good thing. Like the guy on the right, doesn't have too many muscles, looking a little weak, kind of admiring the guy on the left, feeling a little envious of his muscles. So maybe it's going to spark them to want to work out a little harder, lift a little more weights over there, right? So sometimes the envy could be productive if you channel it just the right way. Okay, another thing related, the hidden gift of inspiration, right? So you might envy somebody that actually is kind of a role model for you. So let's say in the picture, the little girl is super small and she's striving to be a ballerina, and she envies, that bigger girl that's on the toe shoes and dancing around really nice. And she's saying, wow, I wish I could be like you. I want to work hard so I can get the talent that you have, right? And so you could be inspired by somebody. So instead of making it something evil like green with envy, make it a source of inspiration. Okay, so that's all I have for today with the hidden gifts of emotions. All right, so I hope that gave you a different point of view, and that helps you to see your own emotions differently and to dig up some of the hidden gifts that they have for you. All right, well, thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon. Bye, everybody.